Hi all, today we're going to talk about the scientific method. Scientific method, as you've learned in elementary school and junior high and all along, is a series of steps that scientists go through to test an idea, to test a hypothesis, to try and solve some problem that's being presented to them. You have done scientific method in your head probably every day of your life, and you just haven't put a name to it, and you haven't actively thought about the steps that you're going through. But trust me, it's there. You know how to do it. So we're standing in my backyard today because this is where I've applied scientific method the most recently. Every summer in my backyard, we have 1.5 million flies. And it makes it hard to want to come out here and enjoy my backyard. We've got lots of plants back here. I've got a whole garden. We've got grapes and raspberries and trees with fruit like pluots and apricots. And so it's a really green space. It's nice. I like being out here with my beasts. I've got 2 dogs and a tortoise. But what makes it not so enjoyable is all the flies. So that's my problem. How do I get rid of the flies in my backyard so that I can enjoy this space? So then I did some research. Research is usually the second step here because you have to be educated in how you're going to go about solving the problem. And so I went to Pinterest. I'm a mom. We go to Pinterest for solutions. And I read this whole article about natural ways of preventing flies. And that's good because I want to be out here. My dogs want to be out here. My tortoise eats things that fall on the ground out here. So it has to be something that's going to be non-toxic. And what I found was that there were certain plants that the flies didn't like. They didn't like marigolds, they didn't like basil, they didn't like mint, they didn't like thyme. Now I have a hypothesis that I can develop based on that article. If in my backyard I plant marigolds, then there will be less flies because the marigolds give off an oil that has an odor that the flies don't like. Next step. I designed an experiment to test this hypothesis. I went out to Home Depot and I bought marigolds. And you can't see them really because my husband planted them in around the time. But those are the really pretty flowers that are buried there in the plants. Okay, so that was my experimental phase. Go out, buy the plants, plant them in the backyard. And then the data I'm going to collect is how many flies do I have in my backyard? Are there less this year than there historically have been? So every day I'd come out in my backyard and lo and behold, there'd be less flies. Now, if I really wanted to do this truly scientifically, I would start counting how many flies I see. And I'd keep a data table and I'd have time versus flies, not time the plant. I've got some of that too. But time as in the number of days and the number of flies. And over time, I should see the number of flies decrease if there really was the solution to my problem. Except for here's where I ran into a snag. Yes, there are less flies in my backyard. However, when I look at my marigolds, there are flies landing on the marigolds. That kind of tells me there's something wrong with my hypothesis because if my hypothesis is that the marigolds are producing an oil that the flies don't like, the flies wouldn't land on them. So just like real science, I had to go back to the research phase. Now I'm looking at other plants. What other plants are going to repel flies? And I would redo my experiment. I'd plant new plants and the flies would land on those plants. So then I'd go back to my research phase. This is how there are scientists at university that have been studying the same fruit fly for their entire career of 40 years. Because every time they start an experiment, it leads to new questions or there's new adaptations to the procedure that they want to do. And that's where you need to realize that in science, it's okay to be wrong. It's normal to be wrong. In fact, if you're wrong, there's more to write about. A lot of times when students starting out write me their hypothesis, they'll do their experiment, they'll get their result, and then they'll go back to their hypothesis and make it fit their results. Don't do that. It's okay if your hypothesis is wrong. My hypothesis about the flies is wrong. I'm sitting here like waving them off my body right now as we speak. It's okay to be wrong. Now, let's say I do find the magical cure for these flies, and I will, by the end of the summer, find a magical cure for these flies. The next thing I'm going to want to do is publish my results. I'm going to want to write a paper, or it's summer and we're talking flies and I'm not in a scientific setting, I'm going to want to tell my friends that have this same problem. And they're going to do something really important. They're going to basically peer review it. They're going to look at what I did and see if my procedure for what I did makes sense. Then they're going to try it because for my results to be accurate, Other scientists have to be able to repeat my results and get the same results. They have to repeat what I did and get comparable results. And then we can say that, hey, you know what? This is working. Because you can never prove your hypothesis correct. You can just say, to date, we haven't proved it wrong. And that there's been a lot of people that have done it and no one's proved it wrong. Your task for this first look at scientific method is to watch a commercial, to look at an ad, figure out what their claim is. What are the problem are they trying to solve? And then go through the scientific method to see if you can prove, using an experiment, their claim or disprove their claim. All right, all have a good day.